From Tahrir Square. Well, let's just step back a bit and get an assessment of this new phase in this crisis, now in its 18th day. We're joined here by Abdel Allah Shal, a former Assistant Foreign Minister and now Professor of International Relations. We heard very clearly from the President, from the Vice President, from the Army. They say they're doing what they can. They want a peaceful transition. Do you think this is being heard by any Egyptians? Certainly not in the square.
No, all the Egyptians are unanimous on one point, that Mubarak should step down and should leave the country. And the regime itself should join Mubarak as well. Anything less than that is not accepted at all. What Mubarak is doing now is maneuvering, is gaining time, is in fact stuck to a certain principle. What the people need, what the people want, he doesn't want to make it. He doesn't want to feel that he's complying with the ambitions of the Egyptian people.
But he said he has listened to his nation. We heard the Finance Minister Samir Radwan just saying he's trying to respond to the people's need, and they worry about chaos if there's a vacuum.
No, the appearance of Mubarak and his deputy doesn't give the impression that they did understand the message. The message is very clear. He should step down. And also Suleiman and other regime members should be also joining him. So this is why I think that they wouldn't understand exactly, except after they leave power.
What do you think is happening at the most senior levels of government? We had talked before how you had believed that senior people would not go to President Mubarak and say, "Sir, your time is up, you must leave." What is the relationship now between the army and the president?
I think the army is in big mess now, because the army wouldn't like to see itself in this embarrassing situation. This is why the army is disbanded. Some officers are joining the people, and some senior officers, in fact, are very dismayed. So I don't think that anyone has the courage to go there, because Mubarak had been in a certain psychological position that he doesn't accept any comment or any hint from anyone. This is why Mubarak is turning now to punish the people. It's not with good intentions at all. If he wants, in fact, to avoid any troubles with the delay of the crisis, the solution of the crisis, I think he would do something. And that something is inside himself, to appreciate now that his nation is going to be burned, and any other violations of the rights of the people here, or violent act, would be, in fact, very disastrous for the country.
But there is a real challenge to the army now. We know, of course, there is the Presidential Guard, which is outside the presidential palace, very loyal to the president, under his command. Could there be even greater splits in the army at the senior levels? We heard of about 16 junior officers reported by the Reuters news agency, but could there be at the top?
I don't think that the Presidential Guard would be against the people or shoot against them, because this is the saddest point in the history of the Egyptian army. So now we have one momentum. This is the popular momentum, and it is directed only to one point: Mubarak and his regime. Otherwise, the people are ready to die for this, either to be martyrs or to be free.
Abdel Allah Shal, thank you very much for joining us here in Cairo as we continue our extended coverage of this crisis in Egypt. Well, there has been reaction from around the world, including from Britain. We've heard from the Foreign Secretary, William Hague. Let's listen to his reaction.
I think there are a couple of things I would say about that. First of all, it's very important that there is restraint today from the authorities. There are huge numbers of people here gathering in fairly small spaces, and I think one of the things we have achieved in the international community in the 2 weeks or so far of this crisis is putting pressure on the Egyptian authorities to respect the right to peaceful protest. So we look to the army and other authorities in Egypt to continue to do that today, as well as protesters to protest peacefully. The other thing is that there's a real need for clarity, because President Mubarak spoke last night, and he spoke partly about transferring some power to the Vice President of Egypt. But it's quite hard to work out what powers are being transferred. Speaking to our embassy in Cairo this morning, it's not clear on the ground there what is happening and what is being proposed. And that isn't helping the political situation there, the gathering of the crowds, because the clarity wasn't there in that speech.
William Hague speaking earlier. Well, let's cross to Jerusalem. The situation is being watched closely in Israel. We can speak to our Middle East correspondent Rupert Wingfield-Hayes. And running the last public reaction we've had is from Ehud Barak, who for the first time said it must be up to the Egyptian people to decide their destiny. Is that what they're saying where you are?
That is an interesting statement from Ehud Barak. It is the first time a very senior member of the Israeli government has come out and, if you like, suggested that, that the Egyptian people or these protests are something positive. I think really the Israeli government is treading a very delicate line here, because it has a lot invested in the government of President Mubarak. President Mubarak has been Israel's partner for 30 years, guaranteeing the peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. At the same time, Israel can't be seen publicly to be against a process that would lead to greater democracy, greater openness and freedom in Egypt. But Israel is very afraid of what the consequences might be. And I can tell you from my own experience of being in Cairo last week and speaking to protesters on Tahrir Square, one young man said to me, and he wasn't an Islamist, he wasn't a supporter of the Muslim Brotherhood, he said that any future Egyptian government should build up the military in order to expel Israel from the region. And that is an opinion that I think is quite widely held amongst young Egyptians, and that's why Israel is very fearful of the future.
Rupert Wingfield-Hayes, thank you for joining us from Jerusalem. So that's how it looks at this hour, just after Friday prayers here in Egypt. Crowds still gathering in Tahrir Square, also gathering at other key points, strategic locations in the city. Just listen to the sound coming from the square, again and again, repeating what has been their main refrain from the start, that President Mubarak must go. We've seen the anger rising there after the president's widely anticipated speech last night. He spoke to his people. He said, as a father speaking to his sons and daughters, that he would keep his pledge to ensure a peaceful transition. But his sons and daughters, at least the ones who have gathered in that square, of all ages, from all walks of life, are saying the president isn't listening. We're going to keep an eye on all the developments from here. But for now, I'll say goodbye from our team here in Cairo and hand you back to London.
Lise, thank you. Lise Doucette there in Cairo.